Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Emily Hiles, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Warrant Officer Class 2, Mark McGavin. We warmly welcome Mr. Greg Bauer, Vice President and General Manager of C6ISR Lockheed Martin Rotary and Mission Systems, and his accompanying delegation. Air Commodore Peter McDermott, retired, Air Force Association National Vice President, and Australian War Memorial Air Force Liaison Officer, Wing Commander Michael Garside. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families who love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Flight Sergeant James Blackman Donohoe. James Donohoe was born on the 30th of September 1910 in Coonamble, New South Wales, to Frederick and Elsie Donohoe. His father was a grazier and ran a sheep property at Gallargambone in New South Wales. Donohoe attended Gallargambone Public School and Dubbo High School and took a sheep and wool classing exam at East Sydney Technical College in 1937. After leaving school, he worked as a jackaroo on his father's property, Merry Villa. He represented the Gallargambone team in cricket. He also enjoyed tennis, and tennis parties were sometimes hosted at the family property. On the 8th of November 1941, Donohoe enlisted in the Royal Australian Air Force. He was farewelled from the district by a large crowd and a social dance, during which he was presented with gifts from the community. He went on to train as an air gunner and in July 1942 received his air gunner's badge. Donohoe embarked from Sydney for overseas service on the 24th of August 1942, arriving in the United Kingdom in November. In December, he was posted to number 467 Squadron, Royal Australian Air Force. As part of Bomber Command, the squadron flew the 4-engined Avro Lancaster heavy bomber. On the night of the 11th of June 1943, the Royal Air Force launched a major bombing raid on Dusseldorf in Germany. Flight Sergeant Donohoe was the rear gunner aboard Lancaster, Papa Oscar-Zulu. While the raid was considered a victory, it was not without losses. Number 467 Squadron had committed 17 aircraft and lost 2 to enemy action. Nothing more was heard from the crew of Lancaster Papa Oscar-Zulu after it took off shortly before 10:30 p.m. and it failed to return to base. It was determined that the aircraft had been brought down by enemy action and that there were no survivors. Also on board were fellow Australians, Flying Officer Leonard Peach and Squadron Leader Benjamin Ambrose, along with British Airman Squadron Leader Donald Mackenzie, Sergeants James McCluskey and Arthur Moore, Pilot Officer Dennis Bovis and Flight Lieutenant Leslie Betts. After the war, the remains of Commonwealth servicemen buried in Europe were examined and identified where possible. Research determined that Donohoe's aircraft had crashed near the railway station at Rosenthal. His body had been buried by the Germans at the Rheinberg War Cemetery, 36 kilometres northwest of Dusseldorf. 2 of Donohoe's brothers also served in the Second World War. Private John Kenneth Donohoe was with the 2nd 4th Battalion when he was wounded at Tobruk. He was sent home to recover in Australia. Sergeant Frederick Max Donohoe served in number 455 Squadron, Royal Australian Air Force, but died in March 1942 when his aircraft's engine failed during a non-operational flight in England. Flight Sergeant James Donohoe's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. A photograph of his headstone is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We will now remember Flight Sergeant James Blackman Donohoe, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director and staff, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorial's development project. We particularly appreciate your visit despite the challenges posed by COVID, and we wish you all a very pleasant evening.